Welcome to a new era. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Queen Talks. I am here to talk to you about some very exciting news that you may or may not have seen on my Instagram about my podcast Rebrand. Now, before I get into all that today, it is a couple days after Christmas. So if you are listening to this, hopefully you are relaxing and maybe enjoying a nice cup of hot chocolate or just cuddled up in your bed and feeling really great. Or maybe you're just already annoyed with your family members by now. Whatever brings you here in the world today on this holiday, I'm excited to talk about my podcast Rebrand and some very exciting things ahead for not the Soccer Queens podcast, but the new podcast called The Strong Female Athlete. I'm going to just get a sip of my water here because this is going to be a long-winded discussion on how this came to be. I feel so proper drinking this Stanley. And honestly, I got forced into one of these. For the longest time, I did not want to hop on the Stanley trend because I just didn't understand the hype. I was like, I'll just drink out of a freaking water bottle or just a regular glass of water. I don't need this crazy cup that everyone's carrying around and trying to act all cool like they're on the latest trend. Now here I freaking am drinking out of a Stanley on this podcast. So Merry Christmas. It was a Christmas gift from my husband. So I am on the Stanley train now. And you know what? I actually kind of like it. All right. So during the Christmas week and a few days just leading up to the holiday, I didn't really take off work. I was still training my athletes. I was still recording old podcast episodes and I was working on the rebrand of the Strong Female Athlete podcast and just really getting my guests lined up because it is launching in the new year. It's going to be a brand new show in 2025 and I'm just trying to have my guests planned a couple months out because it's just so stressful sometimes to be chaotic with my podcast schedule and to just book people the week of. And I'm finding just with the growth of the show now and just how much time it takes, I have to be really well thought out and everything has to be super planned and structured and we have to have a very, very rigid schedule. Otherwise the quality is not going to be good, the quantity is not going to get out, and I want to at least do 2 times a week cadence of podcast episodes releasing. So I really did not take a break this Christmas. Even on Christmas Day I did a little bit of work and it was just kind of nonstop. But you know, for me, I don't really take a day off. I feel like I'm always working on something that I'm really excited about. And this is something I am so excited about because the podcast has really grown kind of unexpectedly over the past 4 years. And actually, wait, has it been 4 years? No. So I started it in 2020. Okay, yeah, we're in 2024. I'm like, I am losing track of time here. But yes, I started the podcast in 2020 and it started off as the Soccer Queens podcast because I played soccer my whole life. I played soccer in college. I do mainly work with soccer female athletes, but I will get into that later. I do more than soccer players. And it just kind of made sense to call it the Soccer Queens podcast. My Instagram and Twitter handles are Fit Soccer Queen. And I was just like, all right, like, let's go with this. Let's keep the branding consistent. Let's just focus on soccer girls because everything that I'm talking about in performance training applies to them and it can help them with their performance and reducing injury. So we started off as Soccer Queens and I mainly had soccer guests. So mainly soccer coaches, soccer performance coaches, or soccer nutritionists, soccer load management experts. Like it was literally everything soccer. But there were a few guests where they were more catered to all sports and just general female athlete performance training, which were helpful for everyone. And I was starting to find that as the podcast began to get more popular and just gain more traction on YouTube, a lot of people from other sports were asking, does this apply to me too? Because we love what you're saying about strength for the female athlete. We love what you're saying about making sure she's eating enough and eating the right things. We like what you're saying about confidence and mindset and hormonal issues. Like, does this apply to us? Or are you just a soccer podcast? And that's when I kind of dropped my jaw and I was like, I had that aha moment that this needs to be for just all female athletes because at the end of the day, performance training is performance training. Sport specific training, I leave to the team coach, the skills trainers of the sports, but female athlete performance training, whether you are building strength or explosiveness or speed or trying to get better at your agility, it is all the same training across all sports. There might be a few tweaks here and there, but nothing crazy. Strength is strength, speed is speed, power is power, agility is agility, good nutrition is good nutrition. Recovery is recovery. So, yes, this applies to female athletes of all sports. And that's when I was like, I need to change this from soccer queens to just the strong female athlete because there were field hockey girls and their parents tuning in, volleyball, cheerleaders asking me questions. I mean, literally from all sports, track and field, lacrosse. And it was just so cool to see that the show was just impacting such a wider audience in the female athlete space. And look, I still love you guys, my soccer people tuning in. I will still talk about soccer every now and then on this podcast. And there may be some episodes here and there that are just soccer once in a blue moon. But overall, this is about featuring experts in female athlete performance training, in female athlete research. I am going to have performance coaches of female athletes on. I'm going to have academics who are in the research of new menstrual cycle findings and new biomechanics findings in the female athlete space, and people who have really just dedicated their lives to the female athlete and empowering her through proper training and nutrition and recovery and load management and all the things that we're always talking about on this podcast. So I can't wait. And I'm very grateful for those of you who have been listening since day one, like the OG Soccer Queen podcast listeners. You guys have been amazing and you've been along on this journey. And I just want to keep making this better and better. I want to keep delivering quality episodes and quality conversations and just have people on who are just excited about their body of work in the female athlete space. It's been crazy because this past year, I've gotten just a lot of DMs of people wanting to be on my podcast. So, people asking to be a guest on my show, which has been really crazy because I didn't think that would be something I would run into. I thought I would have to always be the one reaching out to people. And honestly, I prefer that because look, if I want to interview someone, I will interview them. I have definitely made the mistake in the past with this podcast with, I guess, just having people on that their publicist reached out and I thought they would be a good fit and then they ended up not being a good fit. And I just can't do that anymore because I definitely have had a few episodes that I haven't aired because it just wasn't a fit, or I thought the person was going to cater to you guys as my audience, but they really showed up on the podcast to just sell their crap. And I'm not even kidding, just to plug their products and not really stay focused on the conversation and focused on helping female athletes. So that's going to be something new is I have my radar on for that crap. Like I am not putting up with it. And again, that's why I worked so hard during the holidays because I was really deeply researching guests that I'm having on and just their contribution to impacting female sports and performance and solving this crazy puzzle that is injury reduction, especially ACLs in female athletes. And yeah, it's been really wild because I don't want people to come on for a transaction to plug their services or their online coaching or their products. It's like, look, if I love your stuff, if I love a book that you maybe came out with, I will let my audience know. I will only promote things that I love and I know that you guys are going to benefit from. And yeah, I just want a deep discussion, not a quick transaction. That's not what podcasts are about, at least not in my world. So, yeah, that got a little crazy just having people reach out. And I am grateful that it's gotten to that level, that it's that popular, but if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And I'm going to make sure from here on out that it is absolutely a perfect fit for my audience of female athletes and their parents and also their team coaches that listen to this show. This podcast has a very clear audience. So, obviously, female athletes, their parents, and their team coaches. It is not for other performance coaches or sports scientists to listen to. Maybe if you work with female athletes, but it is not going to be one of those like typical like sports science, strength and conditioning podcasts where people just try to sound super smart and outdo other performance coaches, which you see a lot of nowadays. So it's not going to be this like overly complex, like very scientific conversation. I want to really break things down simply because when things are kept simple in this space, people are a lot more propelled to take action, to get their daughter training, to make sure that she's stocked with healthy foods or she's prepared for a tournament weekend with her nutrition. And I just want to make this information very digestible, very actionable. And I'm not trying to sound smart here. I'm really not. So that's going to be another big change. And one more thing is hopefully there will be more solo episodes. I'm starting to get the hang of these. I'm not going to lie, I'll be honest. There are some days I will wake up and I'm like, I don't know if I have the energy to film a solo episode because it is a lot. I am so used to just sitting here and taking in what my guest is saying and taking my notes and then asking the follow-up question and then letting them talk for another 5 to 10 minutes. And it's very chill. But the solo episodes, they do take a lot of prep and a lot of thought. I always have to write out my outline so I don't miss what I'm going to cover. And so that the stories I'm telling within those solo episodes, not only do you guys relate to them, but you can take action on them and you can really get the overall theme of the story and the message I was trying to get out there and how it can apply to your life or your daughter's life. So the solo episodes do take a lot of prep, even though some of them are like 30 to 40 minutes. There's like an hour of prep, maybe even more, that goes into brainstorming them and writing out the outline. So it is like a full day's process, believe it or not. As much as I want to tell you guys that I just hop on here and riff, I don't. There is always a plan and there's always a takeaway message that I want to make sure is conveyed to you all. So, thank you very much for listening. I think one thing I didn't mention is the podcast last year reached over 1 million views on all of our episodes, which was an insane milestone. And I just think that it just speaks volumes to just the content that's in it and the content I want to keep making better and better. And I know people still value long form content. And with the potential TikTok ban coming up, we are now in December of 2024. We're about to go into 2025. There's a lot of talks with TikTok getting banned and just more of that short form soundbite content. And I really think people are moving away from that. I think we're moving back to the long form content, whether it's podcasts or reading a whole book. I think people crave that. I think people crave to learn deeply about a topic. And that's what I plan to bring you with this new era of the Strong Female Athlete podcast. So, thank you again, and we will see you on the first episode in 2025.